Hi guys, and welcome to the Knitting Pastor podcast. I'm your host, Heather. I am a United Methodist pastor serving two churches in rural mid-Michigan, and I live near one of those churches with my two children, Abby and Philip, and my Rhodesian Ridgeback, Flint. If you are a new viewer, I would like to say thank you for stopping by my channel and checking me out. I hope that you like what you see, but if not, there's lots of other options out there, so please move on, and I hope that you find something that does suit your needs. To my returning viewers, thank you so much for coming back to hang out and spend some time with me. I really appreciate that you are all taking time out of your busy schedule to hang out and chat and spend some time with me. You can find me on Instagram and Ravelry. I'll put that information in the down bar here on YouTube. I am unfortunately no longer posting show notes. My schedule is very busy, and show notes and putting that together is pretty time consuming on top of editing the podcast. So I am not going to be posting formal show notes. If you happen to have a question about a knitting pattern that I've shown or anything like that, please don't hesitate to contact me. Leave a question in the comments here on YouTube, whatever you need to do. I am active on Ravelry, and I do keep my project page pretty well updated with what my knitting projects are. So by all means, go there and check that out. But if you have any additional questions, don't be afraid to contact me. I have quite a bit to kind of talk to you about today. So I'm not going to spend any more time with some of this boring businessy stuff. So I am just going to go ahead and get on with the rest of the podcast. So moving on to what's on me, I am wearing today, this is the Bachline shawl by Becky Sorensen, who is also Soprano Knits. And this is it's a smaller shawl design, but it's a kind of a wonderful design because it's a 4-color shawl, but it's also adaptable. You could adapt it for 3 colors as well. And it does not use a large quantity of yarn. So if you have scraps or whatever lying around, it's great to kind of knit that up. I think the most that was used was maybe this color here, and it was less than 50 grams of that, I'm pretty sure. I'm not 100% sure how much it gets used. You have to go look at the details for the pattern. But it is a great way to use up those leftover bits that you have. And in fact, there's a good chance I'm going to be knitting another one of these because I love to knit socks, but I don't use a full 100-gram skein of yarn for socks. I have pretty small feet. So even if I stretch it, I might use like 70 grams, maybe. That's like the most. So I still have a good chunk of yarn left, and I'm always looking for ways to kind of use up that leftover bit, and this shawl is a great way to do that. And it's not super big. You could adapt it probably and make it bigger, and since it is a shawl pattern, I think you could also take it and adapt it for like worsted weight and other weights. It would just get, bigger, and you'd have to change your needle size. But I think you could easily do that, and I may do that with some of my larger quantities that I have scraps from as well, because that would be pretty cool. So that is what I am wearing today. The weather here in Michigan has been cold. It's January. We got a bunch more snow. We had this weird thing happen last week, and if you watched my vlogcast, I think I alluded to it. We'd gotten a bunch of snow, and then it warmed up to like 50 degrees, and then the snow was all gone, and then the next day we got another big snowstorm, and it was all back. Well, we're kind of having like a repeat pattern this week. It's supposed to warm up today. It's supposed to be over freezing, so in the mid-30s Fahrenheit. And then tomorrow on Saturday, and I believe on Sunday, it's supposed to be up in the 40s. So we're kind of having this like cyclic thing happening with the weather. So it's not super cold today, so I just have got this. That's why I'm wearing this shawl, because it's a little a little lighter weight than some of the other ones. Continuing right along and getting into what it is that I have been knitting and I am currently knitting and all of the yarny goodness that goes along with that. I do have a finished object to show you guys this podcast. If you were watching the vlogcast, I apologize, you will have already seen these because I did finish them last week. But for those of you who have not been watching the vlogcast and are just doing the podcast, I will show those to you again, and I'll give more details on the podcast than what I will give on the vlogcast regarding patterns and yarns and things like that. And these are Dumbledore's Everyday Stockings. And this is a pattern by Erica Luter, who also designed Hermione's Everyday Socks, which is a very popular pattern among knitters. She's like a whole Harry Potter themed series. And so these are called Dumbledore's Christmas Stockings. I'll put this one down. The colorway that I'm using, this is yarn from Molly of A Homespun House. And it is her Christmas at Hogwarts colorway. And these were actually my Christmas Eve cast on. And it seemed fitting and appropriate that for my Christmas Eve cast on and some socks that were called Dumbledore's Christmas Stockings that I used, it all just went together. So this yarn, you can't necessarily see it very well, but it is the gold stellina base, and so it does have a bit of a sparkle to it. These, I absolutely adore these socks. They were such a delight to knit. The pattern was interesting to put together. I won't go into the details of the pattern, even though it is a free pattern. It gives you some options of ways that you can put the repeats together to make the socks unique for you. The yarn was an absolute dream to work with. It is just buttery and soft and dyed so beautifully. I can't even, they're just, it's beautiful. So I'm very happy to have my first pair of socks done for 2018. I don't think these count for a box of socks because they were started in 2017, but it doesn't really matter because they are a beautiful pair of socks. Very comfy, very cozy, and I cannot say enough good things about Molly and her dyeing. Needles. I knit these on Knit Pro Zings. I had ordered some from a European supplier because I see people knitting with the Knit Pro Zings and I wanted to try them. I used DPNs and I loved them. I loved the points. I loved the way the drag on them was just right for me. I loved the way they felt in my hands. They were really fantastic. So I loved the Knit Pro Zings. And I used US 1.5's 2.5 millimeter needles. That is my standard sock needle. I have a fairly tight gauge and it gives me a really nice fabric and a nice sock that I enjoy for myself personally. So that is kind of my go-to needle. And as I go through and show you some of the other socks that I'm working on, that's generally the needle size that I use when I am knitting socks. So this would be my finished object for this week, or these 2 weeks, this podcast, however you want to put it. Moving along to what is on my needles. I do actually have a hoe to show you this week. I'm not going to put it on a sock blocker because this is a pair of socks that I am knitting for David, and I'm knitting them obviously larger than I would knit for my feet, and so it looks funny on the sock blocker. And I don't think they're vanilla socks, so you don't really need to see them on a sock blocker. But they are a pair of vanilla socks. This is the first one. These are, like I said, just plain vanilla socks. I did them, they're 72 stitches around because he obviously has a bigger foot than I do, and I've had him try this on and it does fit him very well, and he does like them a lot. This is Knit Picks Felici. The colorway is Steamer Trunk, and I don't remember which batch of Felici this was, a couple batches ago. But it's just kind of a nice like neutral stripe. I think it looks I think it looks really nice. I am using a contrasting color for the heel. This is leftovers from my Patronus shawl and the kit from Nora George Yarn, which was the tonal in Harry and James's Stag. And it's just kind of a subtle contrast. It's not super obvious and in your face because of the way the striping worked out. But I think that's appropriate for him and his personality. So I have the first sock done. The second sock is living in my project bag, my little foxy project bag from Chicken Soup Designs. And I feel terrible. I'm knitting these for him, and they have so not been a very high priority for me knitting wise at all. I feel kind of bad. But I'm not really all that far on the second sock. This is as far as I've gotten. So I've gotten through like one repeat of the stripe. This is the progress thus far. He is kind of particular, so I needed to make the stripes match. So I worked and went through the ball to make sure I was at the right spot and everything is matching and lining up. So the stripes match. And I've got to keep this up throughout all of it. I am knitting these on my Hiya Sharps. Again, US 1.5, 2.5 millimeter needles. And I really like the Hiya Sharps as well for more slippery yarn. And Knit Picks Felici is pretty soft and slippery because they do have a little bit of a drag on them. I have found that a little bit coarser yarn, like if it's just a wool and it's not merino, I find that there's a little bit too much drag for the wool with the Hiya Sharps, and I prefer my Addy Turbos for those. So this is the vanilla socks that I'm working on for David. Maybe I'll have them done for Valentine's Day and they can be his Valentine's gift or something. We'll make that the goal. My second work in progress is one that I'm very excited about, and that is coming from this beautiful book that I got for Christmas. That's a pattern book featuring patterns by Andrea Mowry from the Find Your Fade fad, but these are not fade patterns. These are more kind of rustic, classic looking patterns. And I am knitting the Oxbow cardigan out of this book. As I said, this is called A Sense of Place. It's a beautiful, beautiful book, and there are 4 of her patterns in here, and I really do want to knit all 4 of them. They're wonderful. And I am loving this so much. I don't really have a project bag for sweaters, so I got this Needles Up tote. I didn't go to Needles Up, but I wanted to support Sue and Chelsea, so I got the tote, and that's where this is being housed because I don't have a sweater size project bag. But I have not one, but 2 sleeves. It's interesting because the pattern has you knit the sleeves first, which is kind of cool because you usually knit bodies first on sweaters, and by the time you get to the sleeves, you're kind of over it, and it seems like sleeves take forever. But this one, you actually do the sleeves first. I'll just show you one sleeve, but I do have them both done. So you can see the texture of the pattern. It is beautiful. I absolutely love it. It is so much fun to knit. I am having a great time with it. And like I said, it's a nice textured pattern and easy to remember, so you don't have to keep referring back to the pattern, and it's easy to read where you're at in the pattern repeat, so that's great too. So I do have the sleeves done. I have not cast on yet for the body. I'm hoping maybe I can get that caked up and do later today. The yarn that I am using, I actually have a skein right here. It is the Brooklyn Tweed Corey yarn. It is the yarn that she used to design it and is what's recommended with the pattern. And I went ahead and went with that. I was looking at some Quince & Co., but it's a bulky yarn, and sometimes it's like bulky, chunky. The yardages were different, and I was concerned with gauge and having it be a garment. I wanted things to be right, so I decided I was just going to go with the Brooklyn tweed. And so I did, and this colorway is called Flint, which is appropriate because that is the name of my giant dog. And it's a really nice earthy brown. And I never really cared for woolier yarn until I got this. This is 100% Targhee. I can never say that. And it is woolly and sheepy, but not scratchy. It's beautiful. Oh my gosh. It is fantastic, and I love working with it. And I am so excited to start on the body of this sweater and get that going because this is a dream. What else was I going to say about that? Oh, I have not been alternating, or I did not alternate skeins for the sleeves, but I am going to alternate skeins for the body just to make sure I don't have any weird lines happening throughout the body. I think it's okay that I didn't do it for the sleeves. These are two separate skeins, and they look exactly the same to my eye, and they look the same on the camera. But it's hard to tell. What it looks like in a skein and what it looks like knitted up are not necessarily the same. All the skeins look to be pretty close to the same color, but I don't want any distinctive lines from where I'm changing skeins, so I am going to alternate skeins for the body of the sweater once I get that cast on, which, as I said, I hope to get going later today. My last work in progress, I do have one other work in progress, but I am not going to show it because I have not knit on it at all since I showed it to you on my podcast last time, because the sweater has taken over, and that's what I've primarily been wanting to knit on. However, one must always have some socks going, and I know I have vanilla socks going, but those don't count. So I wanted to have some pattern socks going because you do, and that's what's got to happen. So Mina Phillip, who is the Knitting Expat, is doing 2 separate sock clubs for the year, or for 2018, and they're alternating months. One is a beginner sock pattern club, something like that. The other is a more intermediate one. And the first one came out at the beginning of January for her Wanderlust collection, which is the beginner one. And so I decided that I wanted to cast those on. And I'll just show you the picture from the pattern page. And they're called the Ravelry socks. So this is what they're supposed to look like. I have them of my own, and I have not screwed them up. And Ravelry means the restless race of the traveler's heart before the journey begins. So these are living in my project bag from the Freckled Whimsy. This was part of a collaboration that she did with Sue and Chelsea of Legacy Knits, where it was a Valentine's thing, hence the hearts and stuff, where you got a bag and a skein of yarn. It's not the yarn that's in here, but these are the socks. I just finished the heel. An idea of what the pattern looks like. So yeah, I just finished the heel, and I'm starting in on the foot. This is the first sock. This yarn is Knit Picks Hawthorne, and I have absolutely no idea what the colorway is. I use this, I'm in my Marled Magic. as when I caked it up, and I have no idea where the band is or anything like that. And I've written down nowhere what this colorway might be, and I went to the Knit Picks website, and I think they might have discontinued it because I can't find it anywhere. So I have absolutely no idea the name of this colorway. I am sorry. It's mostly red with bits of like orange and then these yellow pops in there. This is just a stockinette side to give you a better idea of it, and it kind of does this striping thing that's kind of cool. So yeah. And Knit Picks Hawthorne is superwash wool and nylon. So they're a rougher sock than merino, but still soft and still nice. So I am enjoying this. The one thing I like about Mina Phillips beginner patterns is they're pretty simple and easy repeats to remember, and but it's enough that it really keeps the knit interesting and going, and it keeps it moving quickly instead of just all stockinette all the time. So that's what I really like that a lot about her patterns. I did a 1x1 twisted rib, which is, typically the rib that I do, and then a fish lips kiss heel, because I didn't want to think about a heel or a heel flap, and I may be playing some yarn chicken with this skein. There's about 65 grams of this left, which is pretty close to what I would get with a pair of socks. So, and Fish Lips Kiss Heel doesn't use a ton of yarn, so I didn't want to do a heel flap and gusset and like run out of yarn. So that's why I went with that heel as opposed to something else. The needles that I am using are the Knit Pro Zings double points. Again, US 1.5, 2.5 millimeter needles. I love them. Perfect drag even for a grippier, woollier yarn. Still perfect drag and wonderful. And pretty inexpensive too, even though I ordered them from like England, I think. They still were not very expensive. So if you are looking for a new sock needle and want to try some DPNs, I recommend them very much. I will say, however, that I got some of their fixed circulars, and so far I have not cared for them. I do not like the join, and that's frustrated me a little bit because I really like the needle itself and I really like the tip. So just be aware of that. I don't know who else has had that problem. I did get the idea from someone to take a nail file and file it down at the joint to maybe smooth that out. I have not done that yet, but I do want to try that and see if I can make those fixed ones go a little bit better. So that is it for my works in progress. So onto my next segment, which is in the stash, and this is new yarn or whatever that I have acquired. I am trying to limit the amount of new yarn that I purchased this year and try to knit out of my stash, but I did want to get, I do have some sweaters that I really do want to knit. I'm just feeling really like knitting sweaters right now, and there are several that I would like to knit. So I did get some sweaters, quantities worth of yarn right after Christmas, as kind of a Christmas treat to myself. One of these you've already seen, and that is the Brooklyn Tweed Quarry that I showed you with my Oxbow cardigan. So I did get a sweater's quantity worth of this, and I got this and I caked up the first one and swatched and pretty much got this going right away because I want a cardigan that I've knit myself. That's calling to me right now, and it needed to happen. So that was the first thing that I got. The second bunch of yarn that I got, and I'm going to apologize for any plasticky crinkling sounds, but these are still in the plastic and I'm not going to take them out until I'm ready to use them. This is also for a cardigan, and it is the Comfort Fade Cardi by Andrea Mowry. And when that came out and I saw it, I was like, that just really looks like something that I would want and I would want to knit. And so I started looking for kits and color combinations for it, and Caitlin of Goosey Fibers had one that just screamed me. So I watched it for a while, and I hemmed and hawed, and then finally, after Christmas, I had gotten some money for Christmas, and I decided to go ahead and order this yarn, and that arrived, that arrived at the end of the week last week, and it is this beautiful set of yarn. It's like blues and grays, which is totally my color palette, with some purples thrown in there. This is the first group. These are DK. It's her Goosey Squish, which is superwash merino and nylon DK. This colorway right here is called Stardust. This one is Diagon Alley. This one is Hagrid's Hut. And this one is called Hide Behind. And I will, once I decide to cast this on, I'll take them out of the plastic and you guys can see these in more detail, but they're packaged nicely and I'm not ready to take them out and knit with them yet, so I figured I would leave them safely protected in the package because you never know what's going to happen or how long it's going to take me to cast that on. I want to cast it on as soon as I'm done with the Oxbow cardigan, but life, you never know what's going to happen. So I want to leave them nicely packaged until I'm ready to use them. So that's it. That's what I've gotten for my stash. Not too bad. Like I said, I'm gonna try to be good about all of this and limit myself and not go too crazy with getting yarn because I do want to knit through stuff that I already have. So next I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've been watching on Netflix or TV. TV is probably not a good way to say what I've been watching because so much of it is from Netflix or Hulu or Amazon or something like that. But I did finish watching season 2 of The Crown, which was fabulous. I've really enjoyed watching that series and getting a glimpse of the British monarchy, and it really has kind of changed the way that I look at and perceive Queen Elizabeth. I realize it's all like an adaptation and it's not necessarily all entirely true, but I think there are definitely parts of it that are accurate, and it has changed kind of my whole perception and the way that I look at that group in general. Not in a bad way, though. I think it's given me more respect for the whole institution of the monarchy. And being American, we have this like weird glamorous idea of it, and I don't think we really understand how it works. So I think it's kind of nice to get a glimpse of that, even though it is through, Hollywood or however you want to say it. It's not a true factual representation. It's, historical fiction, so to speak. And I've really enjoyed that a lot. So I finished watching season 2. I also finished watching season 1, I think it is, of the Great British Baking Show, which Abby and I had been watching. And that was a lot of fun and really cool to see some of the things that they came up with. I love watching those kind of shows, cooking shows, baking shows, and Abby does too, and so it's kind of our fun thing that we'll like eat dinner sometimes and watch it. That's not a normal practice, that's an occasional thing, but it's kind of a nice way to unwind in the evening after the kids' homework is done and I can put down my work for a little while and we can sit and watch a show like that, and I will knit and the kids will snuggle up and maybe fiddle with a game or something like that on their Kindles, and it's just kind of a nice way to sit together and decompress and spend some time together. I've started watching the Netflix series Godless, which is set in like the Wild West, and that's starring, I'm forgetting her name, but she played Lady Mary Crawley on Downton Abbey, and so it's kind of fun to see her in a very different role from like the daughter of an earl to widow in the Wild West. So it's a really neat to see that different side of her. And it's been interesting, and I've kind of enjoyed that. I'm not usually a Western sort of person. I did like Westworld, but it's been interesting, and it's been kind of a fun bit to watch. So I've been kind of working my way through that, and that's been about it. I don't get a lot of time for knitting and TV watching much. I have not finished any books, or any novels, any books that you want to hear about, because I'm busy with other things, and I don't get a lot of time in the evening for myself. I can maybe squeeze in an hour before I'm just exhausted and I need to go to bed. It's a very busy life, but it's a wonderful life too. So my last little bit that I'm going to talk about here is what I'm calling From the Pulpit. And it's not sermons or anything like that, but it's just a little bit where I talk about things that are going on in my life as a pastor. That is a very big part of my life. It kind of takes over a lot, and you have to be very careful to not let it take over everything, because it would be really, really easy to do. So some of the things that are going on, we are in between Advent and Lent, which is called the season of Epiphany. And so there's not a whole lot going on within the church itself. No big things in this period. But Ash Wednesday does begin is Valentine's Day this year, so Easter is early. So there's not a lot of time between Advent and Lent this year. So I have been planning my worship services for the season of Lent and getting things together for Holy Week, and getting all of that stuff kind of lined up and figuring out how I'm going to handle services for Holy Week, having 2 churches, and what services I'm going to do and where I am going to do them and all of that. And so it's a lot to think about, a lot to plan, a lot to coordinate. And I also want to do some sort of a study or a small group during the Lent season to keep people engaged outside of worship as well. So I'm thinking about that. There is also a really fantastic training series that is offered by the Michigan, the Conference of the United Methodist Church in Michigan. And that happens once a month, and the first session of that for the year is tomorrow, because today's Friday. And so the first session of that is tomorrow, and so I will be going to that with lay people from both of my churches. It's kind of a nice thing. They talk about how to expand your church and some techniques for doing that and doing that effectively. So we're going to be going to that tomorrow and kind of getting an overview of all of that. The other kind of exciting thing that is going on is I am trying to get all of my stuff around for applying to seminary, because I need to do that like now. It's time. I got to get it done, because I'm really hoping that I will be able to start seminary in fall of 2018, so this fall. So that means I need to get applications in, and this week has proven to be a little bit crazy and out of my control, and so I have not had a chance to work on them, but that needs to be happening next week for sure, because I need to get that in and get that done. So that's what's been going on in my churchy life. Well, that is all that I have for you guys for this podcast. Thank you so much for sticking around and checking me out. If you like what you see, please give me a thumbs up and hit subscribe. Next week will hopefully be a vlogcast. I will not be podcasting next week. This is a bi-weekly podcast, but I do try to supplement the off weeks with some vlogging content that gives you a little bit of a glimpse into my day-to-day life here at the parsonage. And I hope those of you who are checking that out are enjoying that. You do see stuff that I am knitting. You see life stuff. You see the kids. You see the dog. You see a lot more than just me sitting here talking about what I have been knitting. So if you are so interested, please check that out. I hope all of you guys have a wonderful couple of weeks and that you are staying warm, staying safe in any snowstorms, because it's been crazy with snowstorms. And I hope that you are enjoying your knitting or any other crafting or any other activity that you do for relaxation and enjoyment, and continue doing it and have a wonderful, wonderful couple of weeks. And I will see you next time. Bye!